Welcome everyone to the second part of the Null Save StatsCog 1.1 third-person demo. This is the final part of the tutorial. Unfortunately, the audio was lost on this, so I'll be re-recording it as we go through. In the last demo, we looked at stat values, applying them to the StatCog, and plugging those in to a third-person character controller to apply stamina, health, HP, jumping and sprinting. In this one we're going to be looking at the status effects, which can be a little more detailed, so I'll be talking through each point as we go. To begin, we'll right-click, create, talk StatsCog stat effect. And looking at this, we can see, to begin with, we've got this UI area, and this is not used by StatsCog at all. This has been put here specifically for your use with games. So the only thing that we use is display name, and that's only in the debugger. So the sprite you can apply, a display name, a description, start text, which you would associate with the beginning of the effect, end text, which would be applied whenever the effect ended naturally. So if it had a lifespan and that expired, we would use the end text. Next we have a remove text, which we will be looking at whenever we remove a effect programmatically, either by code or by applying a new effect and having that effect remove it. Display and list is a checkbox you can use to tell yourself whether or not you want to display that in a list of active effects, as well as category. Down in behavior, this is actually used by StatsCog, and we'll see to begin with we've got two checkboxes here, one for detrimental and one for beneficial. Now you might be wondering why both of those are there instead of just is it detrimental or is it beneficial. And that's because an effect can have multiple modifiers. It can have a positive one that increases the amount of XP that you gain, and it can have a negative one at the same time that decreases how much stamina you have. So an effect can be positive and negative at the same time. If you check the detrimental box, you can use statscog.remove detrimental effects to remove all detrimental effects. You can do the same thing for remove beneficial effects if beneficial is checked, or if neither is checked, there is an option for remove neutral effects. So this is going to be a detrimental effect, and we're going to give it a display name of poison. We're not going to bother with the description because we're not going to use it in this tutorial. For start text, we're going to say you have been poisoned. So anytime you get this effect, once we program it in, you'll have a notice that says you've been poisoned. When it ends, the poison has run its course, and if you cure it or remove it in any way, your poisoning has been cured. And the reason, by the way, for having removing of those types is so you could have like a heal area that removes all detrimental, or a cursed area that removes all beneficial. We've also got particles, which will be applied to the game object in the game object's transform. In this case, we're going to go ahead and use the rising spheres effect. We'll throw that in there real quick to have a look. And that's just a bunch of rising green spheres. Looks pretty nice for poisoning. We'll pop back over to the effect. We're not going to make this stackable. Stackable, if that's checked, you can have multiple instances of the effect running at the same time. Otherwise, if you have one running and you try to apply it again, StatsCog will just ignore it completely. It will not add a new effect. It won't reset the lifespan of the current effect. It will just ignore it as if nothing ever happened. You could program in to reset the lifespan if you so chose. This one is going to have a lifespan, which means that it will automatically end after a number of seconds. And for this one, we're going to supply a lifespan. We're going to give it 7 seconds. So after 7 seconds, this thing will automatically remove itself from the stack. We'll go over to the Modifiers tab, and we're going to add a modifier. And the affected stat, that's just the name of the stat value that's going to be affected, in this case HP. We have effect types of instant, recurring, and sustained. Now, the instant and recurring go straight to your base value. so that even after the effect ends, that value has still been changed and remains changed. Sustained goes to your current value and bypasses base value. So once the effect is over, your current value will return back whatever was taken or gained. It'll go away at the end. Okay, if that's a little confusing, we'll see it in action. So we're going to make this a recurring value, and we're going to target value. We could target minimum, maximum, regen delay, or regen amount, and we could add a multiplier, subtract a multiplier. We actually only need 2, but we're just going to do 4 to make it easier for you instead of applying a negative at the front. So we're going to do add. Actually, we're going to do subtract on this one. Sorry, we're going to subtract 3. So every second, we're going to subtract 3 from your HP for 7 seconds. And this is applied by time.delta time. So it won't immediately occur at the beginning or at the end. Every update will apply 3 times time.delta time. Subtract it from your base HP value. Next, let's create our second effect. We're going to have 6 effects in total in this video. This is going to be a beneficial effect that we're going to call swiftness, and we're going to put in the text here. So you begin to move faster, and on the end, you are no longer. Let's see. No, let's change that. Your speed returns to normal. Okay, and for remove, you've lost your swiftness. Okay, so we're going to make this a beneficial effect, and we're going to give it a lifespan. It's not going to be stackable. We're going to let it last for 15 seconds. And here we're going to modify multiple stats in the same effect. So first we're going to modify the sprint cost. And we're going to make that a sustained value so that when the effect ends, the sprint cost returns to what it was without this. And we're going to target the value. And we're going to start by making this an add multiplier, but that would actually increase the sprint cost. We don't want to do that. So we're going to make it a subtract multiplier of 0.5, and that will take your sprint cost and divide it by 2 basically. So we're going to duplicate that for jump costs as well. So now everything stamina related, jumping and sprinting, they have their cost cut in half. So we'll go on to the next effect here, which is going to be the opposite of swiftness. It's going to be lethargy. And this effect we're actually going to make a bit more harsh than just the opposite of swiftness. We're going to affect a couple of other things as well. So let's plug in the text real quick. And we'll make this a detrimental effect. We missed that check, but that's okay because we're not actually using that in this tutorial. So we're going to affect sprint cost, a sustained add multiplier, and this time it's going to be plus 1.5 or times 1.5. So we're going to double the cost for both of these, and then we're going to also target stamina, and that's going to be sustained still, but this time we're going to go to the regen delay. So the amount of time it waits until it starts regenerating, and we're going to double that amount of time. And then we're going to target the regen amount, and we're going to subtract multiplier that, and we're going to divide that in half again. So we're going to go 0.05. So in this, sprinting and jumping costs twice as much. It takes 1.5 times as long for your stamina to start regenerating, and when it regenerates, it only regenerates half as much. Okay, and we're also going to make it so that it cancels swiftness. If you have swiftness applied already, when you gain lethargy, swiftness will be canceled. Next, we're going to create our first instant. We're going to do a healing potion here. We're going to name that Health Potion. I'll just put in the text here real quick. And we're not going to do an end or remove text for this because we're not going to care to display that at all. We're going to make this stackable. We don't need to, but we're doing this in case in your game engine you wanted to take multiple potions or eat multiple food items all at the same time. If we didn't have this checked, if you put in 20 lines in the same frame, it would only accept one. In this case, it'll accept all of them at the same time. And we're going to give this a lifespan of 0 so that it immediately removes itself from the stack. And we'll go over to modifiers, and we will add HP, and we'll just do an instant add of 25 so that you immediately heal 25 points. And the other item is actually, this isn't even going to show up at all when we go to the end because it's an instant. It's not, and it's only an instant. It's never going to have its effect start raised. Effect start will only happen for recurring or sustained. If that's the only item it has on it is an instant, it won't do anything. So we'll create regeneration now, which is going to be basically the opposite of poisoning. We're going to slowly add to our health over time. So we'll pop in the text here. And we'll make it beneficial, and we'll give it a lifespan of 10 seconds. And we're going to target HP again. This is going to be a recurring amount. And we're going to add in 5 HP per second over 10 seconds. So in total, you're going to gain 50 HP back in the course of regeneration. And now our final stat is going to be lucky. And we're going to target quite a few things in here. So let's enter in our text real quick. Do you feel lucky? Do you? Sorry, I had to. Alright, so now we've got that in. We'll mark this beneficial. We'll give it a lifespan of 15 seconds. Pop on over to the modifiers. And we're going to do an XP gain mod on this one. That's going to be nice. And we're going to add a multiplier of 3. So when we're adding, we're going to add 300% to the value. And we're going to just do just the XP gain modifier alone. And we're going to do prevent effects. It's going to prevent both of our negative effects. And we don't have to put that in cancel. So if you have prevent effects and it tries to add either of those effects, it won't. And if either of those effects are already active, it will automatically cancel them. So you don't have to have your item in both places. Anything in prevents is also automatically canceled. So we're going to look back through our items real quick before we start the project. As I mentioned in the last video, it is possible to have circular references in here. And so I always recommend that before you start up your project, you double check all of your effects and all of your modifiers to make sure that they're set how you want them, and so that you don't have any circular references. And so we'll just pop through this last one here, swiftness, and make sure everything looks good. Okay, now we'll just go ahead and start creating a way to use these. But first, we'll lock the inspector and add them to StatsCog. Now, the stat effects list here is all of the possible effects, not all of the effects that are active. And the reason that we put it here instead of in a global is because you might have different effects available for different characters. So now we're going to create a really, really lazy way to add all of these. We're going to add a rigid body to this new game object. We're going to turn off gravity, and we're going to add a box collider. Now the only reason that we're adding a rigid body is because we're going to use on trigger on this, and that won't fire unless you've got the rigid body. Being super lazy, just a 3x4x3 cube here, or rectangular prism actually. And we're going to move that out to a z-index of 5 and slap in basically our poison particle effect so that we can see what we're walking into. And we'll rename that poison area. We're going to go ahead and create a new script here, and this script will control all of our effects. Nice and easy way to get everything done. So demo effect area, pardon me. And for this, of course, we're going to need our namespace again. We're going to do using null save .talk.stats. And the only thing we're going to need here is public string effect name. And then we're going to add an on trigger enter. And we'll get our statscog here. We'll go statscog equals other.gameObject.getComponent statscog. And then we'll just check to make sure that that's not null. And then we will do statscog.addEffect. And as you can see, we've got two overloads here. You could pass the stat effect in directly, or you can do it by name, which is what we're going to do here. So we'll just pass in the effect name, save it, and go back to our editor. Once it finishes recompiling here, we'll go ahead and add that script to our object. Okay, now we're done compiling. We can do add component, demo, effect area. And we'll put in an effect name of poison. And that's all it's going to take to add poison to us. So we're going to duplicate this. We're going to set up all of our effects real quick. So we'll make this one lucky. We'll delete our current effect after we rename it. And we'll throw in the lucky rain particle effect. Duplicate that again. And move it over to the other side of poison. And this time we're going to make it a swiftness area. So we'll rename that swiftness area. We'll put effect name swiftness. And then we're going to duplicate all of these and drag them back. So now we've got 6 areas. And we're going to remove that prefab and throw in rising boxes, but we're going to change the color. Change the color over to a blue here. And then we're going to go through and behind swiftness we're going to put lethargy. And we'll remove that prefab and put in the rising black boxes. Now initially I was thinking of putting the healing potion over here, which I began doing, but then I realized I'd actually rather have that be directly behind poison. So we're going to just go on over to this copy right here and rename that to be health potion area and put an effect name of health potion. And we're going to just change the color from green to red here to reflect that it's health. And I actually end up getting a little confused here in the video. I confused the healing potion with the health regeneration. I actually think I have an issue for a moment because I've confused which one of these prefabs is which. So here we're renaming this, we're making this regeneration area, and we're going to give it an effect name of regeneration. And we're going to change that color to be red. So now we've got falling squares of red versus rising bubbles of red. One is regeneration and the other is healing potion. Now we're going to start this up. And then, as always, we'll click onto our controller and enter the debug for statscog. And we'll start looking at HP because we're going to go through poison first. And there we go, we'll just stand still. We've got an active effect of poison. We've got a modifier of -3. We can watch our health going down. And it's going to stop just shy of 60 because that's how the tick count worked out. Almost perfectly to 21, which is what we were expecting. Well within what we would call acceptable. we'll pop through the heal potion here, which heals 25, so it caps back off at 81, which is our current maximum. I'm going to pop into Regeneration here, and we can see that effect happen. We're going to pop through Poison and watch these two fight each other. And so because of the way that they were fighting, I wasn't very happy with watching them fight. And so what we're going to do here is we're actually going to make them cancel each other. And here you can see I'm running through the heal potion instead of the regeneration. Got a little confused on that one. So we'll go ahead and stop the project here. And we'll go over to regeneration, and we're going to have that cancel out poison, which is really probably a good idea anyway. You don't really want to have two stats fighting each other. And poison will cancel regeneration. And then we'll hit play again. Now we'll jump through the poison. We can see that started. We can see it listed in our effects. It took a little too long to go through that though, so we'll pop in it again. Again, looking at the wrong item, and now we pop into regeneration so it get canceled out. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Let's jump into Lucky now. We'll pop through Poison and make sure that it is not applied. Excellent. And we're going to pop over to Lethargy, also being prevented by Lucky. So that's exactly what we were expecting to have happen here. It's looking pretty good. Let's jump over to our stamina and see what's going on. So this is the one place we'll see a difference between the base value and the current value. So the regen current is 2.5 and 7.5 with a base of 5 and 3. And as soon as this effect ends here, we're going to watch those two pop back to their original values. And there we go. So now we can see 5 to 5, 3 to 3. Everything is looking exactly as we would expect it to. We can look over at the jump cost, and if we pop on over to swiftness, we can see it's being reduced by half. So it's down to 6.25. And we'll watch that regen a little bit. And we'll look over at sprint cost, which we've lost the effect. We waited too long, so we'll go back and look at that again. And we'll walk back through it one more time, and we can see that's at 6.25, which is half of the base, which is 12.5. Alright, so everything is looking pretty good here. I think the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to start adding a listener to show us a list of effects as they come in and get removed. Actually, no, we're going to add one more effect. We're going to gain XP here. Again, we're going to be super lazy about it. We could create a script, but let's do it with an effect, because again, we're lazy. So we'll call this gain 25 XP. We're not going to display it in the list. We don't care about anything in here. We're going to make it stackable. We're going to give it a lifespan of 0. And we're going to go over into the modifiers. And this is where we're going to reference another stat value in our value. So we begin with gaining 25, and then we add in 25 times XP gain modifier. So you can see here how easily we can reference into another stat to create our value. So we're going to pop on over real quick and add that. We're going to duplicate our regeneration area and drag it over to the side a little bit. And we'll rename that to XP gain area. And we'll update our effect name to gain 25 XP. And we start here real quick, but we didn't add that to our stats cog, so we're going to have to stop that, go over to our stats cog, and add that to our list of available effects. And then we can restart the project. Okay, so now we'll go back over to debug, and we'll look at our HP, which is 0. We'll pop in through this new gain mod, and alright, we've gained 25. Beautiful. So I was thinking about reducing the sprint cost to 0 here, just to make my life easy, but I decided against that. So we've popped over through Lucky, and now we've gained 100 XP. So remember, this was a gain multiplier of 300%, so 100 plus 300 is 400. So effectively, we multiplied it by 4 and gained 100 XP. That is the one thing to be aware of when you're doing by percentage. You got to remember that it's added to it. So if we had wanted it to be 3 times, we wouldn't have we've added by 3, right? We would have added 2. Or we could have set it to a normal value. So we've popped through. We see we've gained a level. We can see everything returning back to normal. Our gain mod goes back to normal. Our effect expires. And we're looking pretty good. Everything regenerated when we hit our new level. And so now it's just time to add in the final, well, one of the final pieces. So we're going to add in the event list now. We've got an empty object here sitting waiting for us. It's just a panel with a vertical layout group. And we're going to create a new text item inside of that. And this is going to be the basis for a prefab that we're going to make. So we're going to change the color to white, and we're going to update this font size to 18. Switch over to game view just to sort of see how that goes. And let's add a outline to this. Okay, so nice black outline, white text, looking pretty good. So the next step here is we're going to have to create a couple of scripts. We're going to rename this to event item. And then the first script we're going to create is going to be event list client. Should have named that demo event list client to stay with the regular naming scheme, but that's alright. So to start with on this one, the only thing we're going to bring in is the UI, and we're going to do a required component of text. And we're going to delete everything. Actually, we should have kept start, so we'll go ahead and put start back in there. And we'll get a reference to the text, so text, and then text equals get component text. Okay, and we're going to leave it here for now. We'll come back and add another method. But right now, let's go create the list script. So we're going to create a new script. And this time we'll keep with our structure. We'll do demo event list. Okay, so for this one we're going to use our namespace again. So we're using nullsave.talk.stats because we're going to be getting a reference to the statscog here. So public statscog. And we're also going to want a reference to a prefab, so public game object list item prefab. And we're going to want to get the statscog at start. Or, I'm sorry, we're going to add a listener to this. So add listener, event added, or effect added. We'll go ahead and delete the update. We won't be using that. And we'll create the method here. Actually, we'll name that on effect added. And that's going to need a parameter of stat effect. And we're going to duplicate that for effect ended and effect removed. And we'll go ahead and add our subscriptions as well. So we'll just copy and paste these items back in there. So event added, event removed, and then on, event added, and on, event removed. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to put in here is a transform for the container. We could have just grabbed this at start, but we're going to go ahead and supply that in the editor. So on event added, or effect added, sorry, we're going to do game object equals instantiate list item prefab, and we're going to put that into the container transform. And then we're going to need to get a reference to our event list client. So what we'll do here is we'll do event list client equals go.getComponent event list client. Okay. So next we're going to add in an event here. We're going to do public void set text, and we're going to supply a string, and we're going to actually name that new text because we're already using the variable text. And in it we're going to do text.text equals new text. Alright, we'll go on back, and client dot set text. And actually, we're thinking real quick here. We're going to check, because we're not always going to use this, right? If we don't supply a value, we don't want to create this item at all. So if stat_effect.startedText equals string.empty, we're going to return and do nothing. We won't create the prefab. All right. So now we'll go back on down. I was thinking right here about creating a reference to the game object to destroy it, but I then changed my mind here. I'm going to have the object destroy itself. So we'll just forget about that. And we will go down and do client.addText, or set text, and then we'll just copy and paste stat.startedText. We'll go over to, we'll duplicate this first, and we'll change started text to ended text, and then we'll change that over to remove text. Okay. Now we'll pop over to the event client, and we're going to need to create a new enumerable method here. So IEnumerable kill me, I think is what we'll go with. And we'll do a yield return new wait 4 seconds and give it 3 seconds. So this thing will kill itself after 3 seconds, and we'll do destroy game object. Okay. So the next thing we'll do is we'll start the coroutine from start. I don't know why I got a little confused on creating the start coroutine here. Possibly because elsewhere I do it with parameters, and using a parameter you do the parentheses. Okay, so have a quick look back here. We're added to all 3 effect events. We're setting our text to everything. Good, we get that saved and go back to the editor. I actually make a couple of small mistakes here, which we will see in just a moment. So first we go through and make that event item prefab. So we'll switch on back to scene here real quick. Have a quick look at that again, and then drag it on down to prefabs. There's my first mistake. I did not apply the component there. I will apply the component to the event list. So I've added demo event list, I've added the stats cog and the prefab. Now I'll put in the container transform here. Just going over the vertical layout group real quick, and then we'll be pressing play here. So as we pop through, we're going to see that we have the prefab added, but it's not getting its text, and we're getting an error raised over there. So we can see 2 different times that's pulled in and nothing's happened. So we're going to investigate this error. and what we're getting is that the client doesn't exist because we didn't apply that to the prefab. So we'll pop on over to the prefab, and we're going to add a component of event list client. And that's all that guy's going to need. So as we restart this, we're going to see the second error, which was not remembering that start isn't going to be called prior to set text. Because we're instantiating this, start hasn't been called by the time we get to set text. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually take everything from start, and we're going to throw it into send text and just set text, and we're going to remove start. So now we can restart this project again. And this time we're going to see everything working the way that we expect it to. Okay, so here we go. We're going to walk on through the poison field. You've been poisoned. So we're going to sit here and wait for that effect to end naturally so that we can make sure we see the right text. The poison has run its course. Alright, that's what we expect to see. Let's pop into it again, and this time have Lucky remove it. Your poisoning has been cured, and you do feel lucky, punk. I can't help it. So you begin to regenerate. We'll just walk through these guys and see things happen. Obviously, nothing happens with the potion as we expected it not to. Okay, so what's next for us? Let's pop out of this prefab. And I think we're going to go ahead over into our final item for this video, and we're going to create a new object that's going to subscribe to stats, to the stamina stat value. And we'll just move this guy around a little bit. We don't really care where it goes. We try and line it up a little bit, but in the end we just need to place it on the screen. So we'll set all those values out to 0. We'll update the font size and the color. We'll give it an outline just like the other text. Alright, looking good. So now we're going to go ahead and create a new script that's going to subscribe to our stamina stat. So we'll go over to scripts folder. Not show in Windows Explorer, we're going to say create C# script, and we're going to name this demo stamina monitor. Once the editor catches up here, we'll open that up. Okay, and in this we're going to need our namespace once again using nullsave.talk.stats. Then we're going to need the UI as well. We're going to put a required component of text on this. Again, nothing we really needed to do. This is only for the demo, so we could have just gotten it knowing it's going to be there. But we'll create a public stats cog. And we're also going to need the text. So we'll set text equals get component text. And we'll also need a stat value, which we'll call stamina. And we're going to set stamina equal to statscog dot find component, or find stat, but we've actually mistyped this here. So in a second we're going to fix that. So we'll go up, and we left off the S in our name up there, so we'll put that in, and now we'll do .find stat, and we'll hard code it to stamina because that's all we're going to use it for here. And then we're going to add a subscription to every event on this other than onInit. And onInit is almost never called after you've subscribed, right? This happens on awake for the stat cog. So you would have to have another on awake that predates that for that to come in. So we'll do on update, we'll set text.text equal to stamina dot stamina dot current value dot toString, and then we'll modify that as we go. So we're going to look at stamina. If stamina dot current value is greater than stamina dot base value, then we'll display that we've got a plus. Now, if I had thought about this sooner, I would have remembered that the stamina's regular base value and current value don't ever change or differ from each other in this. The base and current regeneration amount and regeneration delay do, but not the overall value. But this is a good exercise to look at anyway, because you could use this with any value of yours that does have a differential between base value and current value. So if it's greater, we're going to add this plus in parentheses, and if it's less than, we'll do the same sort of thing, except we're going to show a minus. So we're just going to start off by copying it. We're going to apply a color to this one. We're going to say color red. And then we're going to create our onValueChanged method here, which needs a float of old value and a float of new value. And then when this is called, we'll just go straight to update data. Okay, so now let's add all of our subscriptions. So on base max value changed add listener on value changed. We'll just copy and paste that a bunch. We'll change max to min. We'll delete max there. And then we're going to copy these out. And I can't remember for a second if it's dot current or just dot value. So okay. So we remove base altogether, so we'll just select these and do a replace base with nothing. And now all of our subscriptions have been made. And we'll call update data at the beginning, just to set our initial update data. And now let's also add in an item for every active modifier that we have. We could go through effects as well, but for this video we'll just bother with the active effects. So we'll do for each we've made a mistake. So we've changed that plus to a minus. Actually, we should have just deleted it altogether because the value will already have a negative at the beginning of it. But now we'll do a for each stat modifier in stamina dot active modifiers, and we'll do text.text plus equals. We'll add a new line, so we'll do /r/n, and then we will just add the stat modifier dot applied value. As we look through, we can see there's not really anything else to look at. We could have done the effect type, which would have maybe made our display a little more clear, instead of just displaying the applied value. But we're going to save it here and pop back over to the editor. And we're going to select our text object here once we've recompiled. Okay, now that the editor has caught up, we'll do an add component of demo stamina monitor, and we'll drag in the stats cog and hit play for the last time. Alright, so we can see 6.15, which is our stamina. We can see it go down as we're sprinting. We've got no plus or minuses applied to this, and as we pop in, now we can see we've got a plus 4.5 and a minus 2.5, which is our increase in delay and our decrease in regeneration amount. Alright, I think that'll do it for this tutorial. We've covered quite a lot of ground. We've added a stats cog and combined that into a third-person controller. We've taken a look at stat values and how they can reference each other, stat effects with multiple modifiers, and particle effects, and how they can be referenced and the events that are with them. So we hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial, and we hope that you enjoy the asset. Until next time, thanks.